Quite an interesting combo there. Well, now to our next, our first conversation on the program. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Nigeria on Thursday and met with President Muhammadu Buhari, and discussions range from security, education, trade, and others. Nigeria is the second largest trading partner to the U.S. in Africa, with two-way trade between the two of them over $10 billion in 2019. The U.S. is one of the largest foreign investors in Nigeria, with foreign direct investment totaling $5.5 billion in 2019. Well, I have in studio with me Mr. Shola Obadinu, DG, Nigeria America Chamber of Commerce, to discuss issues of trade between both countries. Good to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, so tell us about the Nigeria-U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the objectives of your chamber.
Okay, the Nigerian American Chamber of Commerce was actually founded in 1960, the same year Nigeria gained independence. And the objective is simple and straightforward: to foster bilateral trade relations between Nigeria and the United States, to facilitate its growth, and engender any business-related development, including cultural also, because there is a business element to cultural activities. So that's our mandate, and that's what we are here for.
Yeah, so the chamber is actually about 60 years old.
Yes,
at this point.
Years, yeah.
What achievement would you say this chamber has had, in these 60 years?
Yes, it has helped to project that objective as stated, and it has become a veritable source of information for those that are seeking business ties between Nigerians along that axis. We are an Agua Resource Center, for instance, and we help to give our members capacities when it comes to trading or doing business, whether it's products or services, along the Nigerian-American axis.
Okay, so can you paint a picture of what trade relations has been like between these two giants at this point?
In 2019, aggregate total figures was about $10.5 billion actually, with inflows slightly more, about $320 million. I think our outflows was about $5.1 billion, and the inflows were about $5.4 billion. The only thing is that, the main chunk in dollar terms of our own exports to the U.S. is it has to do with crude oil, while for them it's a diverse products, in fact services inclusive. The non-oil element that we have is so inconsequential, and that's where the concern is in encouraging non-oil exports, adding value to whatever we are taking there. And there are concerns about standards, access to finance, particularly for those that are exporting agri-based products. And that's where we assist in giving these people capacity to improve their packaging capacity, standards, access to finance, and of course, any logistics problems that they might have that may hamper the ability to do business along the axis.
All right. So, looking at, this, the visit, Blinken's visit to Nigeria, okay, and, discussions around trade and security, what would you say were the key takeaways for you?
It's the visit of the Secretary of State is a reassurance visit. It's a confidence-boosting visit, particularly post-COVID. And that's why, if you look at his speech, it started from health-related matters and the assistance that the U.S. government has started to give. He talked about signing a $2.1 billion support fund, and then he started by talking about the climate change, the effect on business, and the willingness of the United States government to assist and support businesses that are focused on green technology, And then, of course, he moved into economic inclusiveness. I spoke about the U.S. ongoing projects along economic lines. He spoke about AGOA, Prosper Africa, and so on. And then he now moved to democracy. They need to deepen democracy in Africa. And he ended with peace and security. All these are very germane issues. And then, lastly, he now mentioned the intention of the U.S. government to convene a U.S. African Leaders Forum to better iron out all these details so that U.S., because the economy does not stand in space. In space, at the bottom of everything is politics. Politics is the foundation for growth. If the politics is not right, you can't get any other thing right. And that's just the reality of life. So if you get the politics right, then you can now work at getting the economics right. And then you can now move to other things like technology and so on. But at the base of everything, if the politics is wrong, everything will be wrong.
All right, then, looking at, trade between both countries, now obviously there's been concern about oil being our main, export to the U.S. So, with all of this, how can Nigeria actually get to a point where we're actually looking at our non-oil, getting more non-oil exports actually to the U.S.?
Well, that's why we are talking about getting the politics right. There has to be a political will to... we have a lot of things. The mining sector is begging for attention, for God's sake. Non-oil mining sector. In economics, there are two primary areas, of course, the mining and the agric sector. And, these are the areas, particularly the agric sector, that has the propensity and the ability to generate jobs in millions. And then the ripple effects that arise from agricultural activities in terms of processing. Because, when you have a market of more than 200 million people who eat every day, for God's sake, and then we keep on importing food items, when we can add value to whatever we have here. We have a significant African population in the U.S., for instance, who love to eat African foods. But we've got to package and export these things. And it is better for us, in terms of forex earnings, to add value to all these things along the way. So all these people engaging in these activities, they need encouragement in terms of knowledge about packaging, knowledge about standards, access to finance. These are very key variables that these people, they talk about.
But what is your chamber doing to actually make this happen?
Well, we do training. That's why I talk about capacity building, because a huge chunk of our members are in the SME sector. So they benefit from that. And then we attempt to link banks. We bring banks, for instance. I think the last time we had that, we brought a bank, Standard Chartered Bank, to help to talk to SMEs on how to access finance for export, for that specific purpose. But then all these things are also tied to standards and because of acceptability. And of course, there are also infrastructural issues that are tied, and that's why I talk about the political end. For instance, the port. The port, I keep talking about that. There is no reason for us. We have a huge coastal area, a coastal line that comes from Badagry down to Port Harcourt, to Calabar, and so on. There is no reason why we can't have 6 very functional ports. There is no reason why somebody can be doing business in Port Harcourt. All his goods, whether they are coming in, they land in Lagos. He has to take all these trailers and whatever to take them to Port Harcourt. And when he's exporting, the same thing. He brings everything to Lagos. And then when you are exporting, everything you are doing, all your goods are, the logistics has to be planned such that the goods have to get there in acceptable form. So if there are delays at the ports that make it difficult for you to keep to your timelines, then your goods get rejected, and then you lose millions of dollars. So there has to be multi-port accessibility along that coastal line that we had, maybe, on a very conscious level, and then even within Lagos, the 2 ports that we have, the Tinkan and the Papa Port, the accessibility to that place, and then the efficiency at the port is a key issue. Otherwise, if it makes sense for me to import through Cotonou, why should I import through Apapa? And it doesn't make sense for us economically. And that's where even the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will be ineffective.
Yeah, because we still have trade liberalization issues with the AFCFTA.
Yeah, you know, because we've got to compete on quality and price for everything you produce if you are going to do good trade within the African continent. And for you to be able to do that, your infrastructure must be right. The security must be right. These are the things the Secretary talked about. You know, because if you, not all factories cannot be in Lagos, for instance. If you are doing anything in Ilorin, you need to transport it down to Lagos, and then the driver and your goods, they get kidnapped by the way. All this, they add to the cost of doing business. They add to the worries of
now you have to worry about security.
You have to worry about that, which is normally taken for granted elsewhere. So all those costs, the cost of overruns that you incur in trying to ensure security at times, they far outweigh your cost of production if you're into manufacturing. And that's a huge concern.
Right, looking at the Intra-Africa Trade Fair that just concluded, now looking at the deals that were signed, you know, how do you see, you know, Nigeria in the scheme of things there?
I'll be honest with you, we need to fix our infrastructure to be competitive within Africa. That's just the main fact. If you are not competitive enough, nobody will patronize you based on sentiments alone. They can do it on a one-off. But if you want a sustainable business relationship, you've got to be competitive. And for us to do that, I think the only area in which we are competitive so far, to me, is labor. Our labor costs, they are cheap. But every other thing is either not there or expensive. So I think there has to be a commitment by the government to do something about the security issue. It's very important, so that let people that do business worry about basic business indices and not things they shouldn't worry about.
Exactly. But what should the private sector actually be doing right now? You know, we know what the government should be doing, but how can the private sector actually help make the situation better for them?
You know, the private sector can make advocacy, can raise the advocacy voices. And we try to do that as much as possible. There is this annual economic summit that has become an annual ritual now. Things have to be taken beyond the point of the president or his representative just coming in, making an opening speech and walking away, and half of the hall, they follow him out. You know, all this hard work that are put into producing papers for discussion, they have to, you know, people, we are willing to help the government. It's supposed to be a partnership thing. We are not a lower partner. The public and the private sector, they have to be on an equal footing for the benefit of the citizens of this country, for the benefit of those that we need to create jobs for the benefit of our incoming generation. The reasons why people run away to these advanced countries is because they are providing for the next generation. When are we going to get to the point where we'll be providing for the next generation? Right now, we are not doing that. We are eating up everything, and that is a sad story.
Quite sad. But what advice would you have for, take for instance, an exporter now looking to actually have their products actually exported to the US? What advice would you have for that person right now?
Okay, now you've got to go through some process, because you've got to find a buyer, you know, and then, you know, for a first timer, there are challenges, because whoever is going to take your orders has to have some comfort in your past history, and that's a bit of an issue. But however, you might be lucky to get a small order to start. Somebody might be willing to try you out. But you've got to now make that commitment work. You know, the discipline to keep to agreements. When you have an agreement with any organization to supply A or B, be it goods or services, you have to, it's a biblical thing. You know, it's not, you know, you can't say, I'm sorry, for a first-timer, this is the reason why I cannot, you are automatically knocked out. And not just that, you are going to lose money. And that's why you've got to be sure of what you do. Maybe the best way to start is to make sure that whatever you want to take out, you have perfected it inside. You have a local market first. And that will give you the initial confidence to reach out to supply outside.
Okay. All right. So the year is almost over. Looking forward now, what's your outlook for Nigeria-U.S. trade relations actually going forward, briefly?
Yes, we hope for better days ahead. The 2020 was a slump because the 10.5 aggregate trade volume in 2019 dropped to about 4.5 in 2020. But the figures we have up to the end of September is suggesting that we have reached the $5.5 billion aggregate figure, which means things are picking up. So the U.S. is a critical trade partner to Nigeria, just as we are also to them. But, you know, we've got to believe in that relationship. And I think we have so much potentials ahead. The U.S. is willing to support the existing agreements that are in place, the AGUA, the Prosper Africa, and now they are even key into the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So there are better days ahead.
Better days ahead. All right, Mr. Badunu, we'll have to leave it there. Mr. Shola Badunu is the DG, Nigeria-America Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much,
Business Morning. All right, after the break, commodities market update is next. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.
This is